June. We do have some distinguished guests. And so I think maybe we should go around and do introductions just so people have a name with a face, as we all like to work as a team and stay out of our silos. So I'm Rick Meinking, and I have been on this committee for a couple of years.
Anson Boder, I'm on the committee.
Deb McDonough also.
Jamie Fitch, Sustainability Coordinator.
April Sider, liaison to the committee from Town Council.
Excuse me, Ron Allen, on the committee.
John Clucci, Town Council.
Norman Kildown, Finance Director.
Nice to meet you.
Lydia Job, on the committee as of last month.
David Kirstein, committee.
Excellent. The first order of business is to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
You sent them around. Thank you, Jamie, for doing that. Any questions on the minutes? Seeing none, can we entertain a motion to approve them?
Move to approve.
One by. And a second. All right. Oh,
And we're all in person, so.
so we can just do a
Yeah,
raise a
favor.
hand. All in favor? Nice.
Thank you.
Second order of business is the agenda. We are not going to go over the lighting ordinance changes. We're working on the lighting ordinance of the site plan review to bring it up to current standards and in compliance with our comprehensive plan. So we will go over those in July, but Jamie's got some red line versions of them, and a clean copy was recently sent to everybody.
Yeah.
We got all kinds of lines. These are all great, you know, these are, multiple people have contributed to this endeavor. And so we will go over this next month, and then it will start going through its approval process through public hearings and all of that stuff. So with that, we're on to new business, and today we're going to talk about that little provision that is in our comprehensive energy plan that states that we and approved by the town council, not putting you guys on the spot, but there is a provision in there that says there will be a percentage of a project savings that is allocated to a line item in the budget that would enable the sustainability committee to continue its pathway. And our pathway is obviously the comprehensive town plan and our own energy plan, but it will enable us to fund whatever we want that falls in line with those parameters of the energy plan and the comprehensive plan and anything else that comes forward. So today we're fortunate to have the are you the finance director? Is that the official title?
That's what they call me.
Okay. And we have John Clothier, who is the chair of the finance committee in the town council. So we would like to have a dialogue with you to see if there is a way that we can take the next step and get this ironed out with the town council and have something in the budget coming forth maybe next fiscal year. Won't happen this year.
Yeah, I think that window's passed this year. So April shared with me probably a couple months ago, the document that was passed by our council, and it's not exactly clear what amounts should be put into that account. And I think that's the piece that's probably missing procedurally. When the council adopts a budget, there could be a line item to say X should go into the, whatever we want to call this fund, sustainability fund. And as long as the council approves that X, that amount will go into the fund. So I think what you guys need to do, and probably engage the council down the road on it, is how do you determine what X's? Yeah.
Well, that's why it's an X, because we
Yep.
didn't want to put any handcuffs, and we didn't want it to be a provision that kept the energy plan from being adopted. We just put the onus on the town council when we said, what is that X? Is it a percentage or is it a flat line? It's whatever whatever X wants to be, it's in the hands of the town council. Now, we're here to advise what we think X might want to be. But I don't want to speak for the committee at this point. I'd like to have an open dialogue and welcome audit.
Sorry.
So you sneak in, didn't want to ignore you. So originally, I think we were thinking, some percentage of the savings that came from projects that we had done and had, have in the future, those savings. For example, way back before that, X was, well, it hasn't been defined, but we did a major lighting conversion in the streetlights. And there was some funds that were needed in order to purchase those fixtures from the utility. So now the town owns those fixtures. We then converted those, not we, the town converted those into LED. And there's a significant savings that was generated because of that. That savings just got, enjoyed by the general fund. And we wanted to have a portion of that savings put into a line item so that we could use it to do more things. That's the, go ahead.
I just want to back up, because the primary issue is that there are often, or have been several opportunities that we've not been able to take advantage of because we don't have access to money. And without a budget line item, we can't say like, here's this great grant and here's this
Matching portion that we could do to get it.
Or here's this thing that we should be doing advertising on. And with the sustainability coordinator, we've been able to access a little bit more of that resources. So this idea was years ago, it's like, wait a minute, if we're saving money, then we should have access to some of that money in order to save more money, rather than needing to go through the full bureaucratic cycle of ensuring that sometimes that's too slow to take advantage of the opportunities that I got. And so that was an idea of like, we should at least be able to claw back some of what we save the town. But since then, we've realized that that's a way too complicated way to do the accounting. And so I think the recommendation at this point might be to do more of a fixed line item that might be initially calculated based on some of the projects that have occurred fast.
You raise a good point. So one issue is putting money into the account, which the council just needs to authorize whatever amount it is. The other is getting it out.
Mhm.
So traditionally, that is also a council action. Although it's not an appropriation, so it can happen at any time.
Right.
But you typically it would be the council that would authorize the use of those funds. You could define the account in a way that gave you access to those funds, but that's not typically how we do it. You would need to specify, a little more precisely how those funds can be used.
And I don't think that we object to that. I mean, that's a one council meeting or maybe like that.
One council meeting.
Fairly quick. And as the, like, we have the plan and here's the plan, here it is, you say yes or no, as opposed to an appropriations process or trying to scrounge money out of some other account or the kinds of things that we need to do.
It is a cleaner way to do it.
Can I ask a question? Do you guys have an idea of what you want to use the funds for? I'm just thinking for the next budget year, like John, would it be possible to almost create a sustainability capital improvements fund? Like a line item that could get approved through the process and then Jamie and Angela could sort of manage that as a capital item? And you guys could actually build up what I don't know if you know that far in advance what you want, or you might, because some of the grants come up pretty far out
Right,
of it,
yeah.
you know what you're gonna try to do.
Yeah, I think that might be a potential first step. I think the other things that have been discussed with this group is a larger effort that may need savings over time in order to carry it out. And so planning for that and having it as a reserve account that isn't a use it or lose it type of thing. But I do like the idea of a CIP for sustainability also. If there are certain initiatives that we know are coming in
That
the
might be
coming year.
Could you also use we always have excess building permit revenue? Could there be a part of percentage of that, maybe
Yeah,
go
you could-
towards it, like
If
the
you can define it
electrical
however you want.
permits and things like that, maybe there's a certain percentage of that, so it's not we say that, so it's not as hard, it's just kind of a rolling percentage.
So for example, our EMS department, they bill out when they go do a pickup and delivery. The way we approach them is the first 1.2 million that's collected goes to the general fund. Anything in excess of that goes into this reserve account that could be used for. Yeah, special ed. That's very similar.
That might,
to what you're talking about.
yeah.
Now, when the EV ordinance was established, there was a option to pay instead of install. And that is been put in that designated EV charger line in the budget, or is that just, how is that being, if we were to collect funds, where would that go?
They would go into that dedicated account, which has restrictions on how it can be used.
See, that's one of the things that was in my mind, if you were looking for some upcoming ideas of what's happening. I know down the road, there's EV charger money coming into the state and it's gonna be leveraged, and then it's gonna be competitively bidded out. There's a copay that would be required from the applicant in order to, draw more funds. And we would have an opportunity if we had that funding to say, we want to participate in that competitive bid, and we can leverage this amount.
So I think with the EV charger, so if somebody comes in and pays the in lieu fee, that's already gonna go into the dedicated account
Right.
today.
We haven't seen anybody do that yet. though.
Your fee's high enough.
Yeah, and we haven't had to do any revisions to that. We have not seen an applicant balk at that. Remember how initially we thought, well, we'd be back at the drawing board and trying to smooth. There's been
It's been a good 6 months.
radio silence.
Let's hope we have another good.
And we've had a lot of projects come through
Is there any other funding source for that fund, or is it just the in lieu fees?
in lieu fees for,
That was just a way to.
that was just a way to make sure they do it and
And we
put
had
it high enough.
suggested moving those, like directing those to a sustainability fund to not tie in as closely to that, but.
And I think that the council was supportive of that. It was just a matter of timing to get things, get the ordinance in place. And I think that they were open to doing a revision so that we had more flexibility. Actually, I think it was Counselor Anderson who said, I would like to see more options for the in lieu fee that comes in. So we don't have any money coming in currently. Like you said, our fee is high enough. But I think there may be an opportunity there if we want to suggest a revision in the future.
Now, at some point, and I think it was years ago, we had done some math, we should prepare better for this meeting, on what we felt like the energy committee, and now sustainability committee's savings to budget had been over time.
Well, we used to track the savings when we did the projects,
Yeah.
and like the solar, we're now enjoying the savings because the town council approved the payout of the PPE that we were with on a couple of the solar array systems that we have. Now that savings is continuing to be enjoyed because of the purchase of that.
Yeah, that's quite significant.
Yeah, so we still have some of our projects that are still seeing savings today that,
But that was a perfect example of a situation where the buyout time came. We've been trying to have council prepare for that buyout. Council hadn't prepared for that buyout. We didn't have a set aside fund, so we couldn't manage that ourselves. The time for the buyout came and it wasn't possible to do the buyout at that time. Did we?
we had to
Did we
wait.
hold on to the specialized pricing?
Yeah.
Like there was a time when we
did.
felt like we
We-
were gonna have to
we-
pay
Extra.
because we
Yeah.
couldn't get access to the money
Yeah,
when it was
we-
time to pay out despite our best efforts to make that happen. So this is another perfect example.
Revision Energy stood up to their original agreement with
Okay.
us, but it was
But
over a year later.
Right,
Well,
we missed the
Over a
first,
year.
We benefited with the fact that we operate on a calendar year and our power purchase agreement with them was over. We operate on a fiscal year and theirs was on the calendar year, so we actually didn't miss out anything. We just had to have it done, completed by December 2021, which we managed to do. So it did take 2 turns in front of the finance committee to put
to
that
get
in
that
place.
money in place.
But we didn't miss out on any opportunity through our agreement
Yeah,
and
that's-
revision.
I will note, however, that the economic dynamics of that agreement have changed given the change in interest rates because of the discount rate we applied.
So, I guess we're looking to the finance committee, within the town council to give us some sort of idea of what our next steps should be that would be helpful for you. To somehow create a line item that would establish a fund mechanism for future endeavors.
So I can talk
Not to
about
put
it,
you on the
I can
spot.
talk about it with finance committee. But I guess what I'm gravitating towards is between now and the next budget cycle. Work on basically a memo that can itemize some of the savings that you can attribute to, efforts of this group and what amount those add up to. And suggest what percentage should get into a dedicated account. And then the finance committee can balance that, right, yeah, and then, right, come up with a real number. And then the council can determine if that's, if that's within their appetite to do.
Yeah, I think it's important, as a kind of sitting in my council seat, I think it will be important for this group to identify some specific opportunities that you either can identify now, that would be something that you could be driving towards, or things in the past that you have identified, just to give the council an idea of the kinds of opportunities that are out there, because that won't be something that they probably will likely know.
And sitting in my finance director chair. While we enjoy the savings and we appreciate those contribute to building fund balance, which is.
Yeah.
Another
Huge goal
goal
for
of the
council this year,
council.
yeah.
So when we're writing the memo, let's keep that in mind, that we don't put too much pressure on. Diverting these funds away from helping us build fund balance in the future.
And don't forget that there's, a lot of times there's, like when we did the streetlights or the solar buyout, there's upfront costs that we're paying. So just make sure.
Oh, yeah.
contemplate
Oh,
those.
yeah. We very much understand that,
Yeah.
but we've not intentionally done any projects that would not save the town significant amounts of money over time. Because most of the work in this area does in fact save money. People complain that it might be too expensive to do, but most of it saves money over time. Because of expenditures.
So I think conceptually, the council would generally be supportive.
That's what I thought too.
As long as it's not like $20 million.
Anything less than that.
We'll keep it at less than half of that. But no more, no less than 25%. Well, that's good direction for us then, is to go back in our archives and do some calculations on what we did save. Taking into account there was the capital to actually see the projects to move forward. Yeah, makes total sense. And it's nice to hear that the council would be receptive in viewing that.
I think.
You think?
Sure.
I think so.
I think you should also spend a lot more time talking about the things you want to do.
Yes.
So I think that's more exciting and more likely to get you. You save money, we've already spent it, right?
Right.
So like talk about, you can kind of say, these are the types of projects we've done and this is what we say, this is what we want to do now. And this is where we can fund it, and this is how much it might save in the future. I think that might be.
We can do a little bit
You
of
know
that,
what, a
but the
little
thing
bit
that's
of-
happened over the years, we could probably go back through a minute, I don't know, go back to minutes. But the opportunities we've missed, and I think we cannot predict the future opportunities in any meaningful way. But that's the thing that really bites, is when there is money on the table that we have not been able to access the process.
But did you predict maybe the next 24 months of opportunities? I know Jamie knows a lot
And
of
some of
things
these
that
things have come through and you've had like
Yeah.
3 months to put your proposal in. And that doesn't fit within a budgeting cycle, and that doesn't
Right.
fit within.
But I think that
But I think
there,
there are some things
and
that,
I think like kind of larger conceptual things, like, we don't necessarily need specifics, but what are some priorities within town that we would like to see happen if we have funding to support them?
Okay.
if we had funded this, go ahead.
Solar was supposed to have been a pilot, so we should be moving forward with additional. solar.
We could do additional solar. We could also say that this funding could help as the town has vehicle replacement cycles and equipment replacement. We could navigate toward helping the town with the incremental cost difference between a gas-powered sit mower and an electric-powered sit mower. And that fund could be used to offset some of that, or buses, or, plow trucks, police chief vehicle.
Or helping residents too. We've talked about grant programs to help them build more efficient houses or do energy upgrades. For residents and looking maybe outside of municipal operations and thinking about how residents may benefit.
And there's some in the IRA right now.
Right.
Yeah, with the,
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's powerful though. That's a lot of tax credits involved in that too.
That's why I think the building permit, like excess revenues kind of tie in perfect to that sort of, those ideas that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
Grants and things. And education and all of that, I think that makes, it ties really nicely.
And I just think back to, when we did the compost, the curbside compost pilot. And that could have gone much better if there had been any money at all to be able to use for advertising and communication. I think we scraped out enough money for one set of postage stamps. But there was not enough funding to do the lead up for that properly. And that's money that could have come out.
So I don't want you to feel like you can only use this account for all of your, if you have ideas about projects or initiatives that we should take on, those can be specifically funded as well. Right, it's something that you've worked through.
Right, we could say that, we highly recommend, we could do a memo of saying highly recommend that the council consider, appropriating funds for X.
I think it was the turnaround time that is, if I'm not wrong, I think it's the turnaround time, which was the significant frustration. It just took forever to get anything.
We only do it once a year.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's.
It does take forever.
That's the problem. There is no ad hoc process to produce money if we needed it for some really good reason. That's why we waited a whole year just for the buyout for the solar panels. And the savings there were significant. At that time, I think I calculated it was about $150,000.
But we'd like 90% of that. please.
Put it in the memo.
So it sounds like you guys want a starting pot, and then you want maybe some CIP and then some excess revenue sort of for grants, but you want a starting pot in the next to get. That's kind of what it sounds like,
You
right?
may want to initially fund that.
Initially, yeah,
We would like to see a sustainability pot.
even if it's just $25,000 or $20,000 advertising or for small.
Something that starts to send a message out
Good.
that we have a way of leveraging some internal funds to further advance and get more funds.
And I mean, it's at early, so I'm just kind of brainstorming. So, I mean, that could even be almost like a line item in engineering services budget, could it not? Just $25,000 sustainability sort of activities. Like I have a planning initiatives item, and I can use it for different things. Sort of like what small grants, or if we need a little study here or some things like that. That might even be a way to get it started. You just might be like overcomplicating it, right? Like I'm so simple.
Well, then you have a lot of discretion through Jamie about how to use those funds.
And that would be a good way to do that. And then you start thinking about. Like conservation, a great example, they wanted an open space plan, put it in the CIP. We got it approved through the council process and now it'll go. So it's a bigger line item, but it was in the CIP process. So maybe if you say you wanted to do, we want to electrify all of the town's vehicles, or I'm just.
Yeah.
Something weird, that'd be a CIP that go through the process that way. And then you could justify some of that funds with using maybe some excess revenue from building permits or things like that. And so goes through, I think, easier. And
So we can barter with the
You
finance
get-
committee.
Would get lost if you ask for just the world without some parameters.
Agree. So you're never gonna have your own, like, pot that you can do whatever you want with, but, yeah, so, but if you know what you want, you can ask for it, and there's a decent chance you'll get it. If you know there's opportunities out there that you don't know what they are yet, but you know you need access to funds, then that may be what needs to be flushed out is how you get access to funds.
Yeah, and that's really one of the barriers that we have with some of these, federal and state initiatives that come out. There's always co-pays required and we just don't know. We don't know when they're gonna come out.
But there's no mechanism at this point in providing these funds any quicker than our existing practices.
Well,
Right,
Unless you put it in a budget somewhere.
If there was set aside funds, then that process is much quicker, you know.
Yeah, I mean, an example is for conservation land purchases. We don't actually have money sitting in a pot, but we have a pre-approval. We have a bond authorization that, so we can just go through a regular council process at any time to try to move one of those projects along.
Mhm.
We don't have to wait to go to voters and
But you also have the land trust
they participate.
that they participate and that's some funding that we don't have that kind of access.
Okay, so the job then is to figure out what a reasonable ask would be, or probably, like, I would like to see this sort of as an annual commitment in budgets moving forward, so that that money is building up and is available when something happens. It's really asking the town to make an investment in future sustainability opportunities. In much the same way that the town makes an investment in future land purchase opportunities, that you don't know when that's gonna happen. You don't know exactly how it's gonna play out as a process for council meeting to approve that. So it's not something we would just like sit in our little room and say, hey, we're doing this tomorrow. But to know that those funds are being set aside for those future needs.
That's fair. We tend to spend all the money that we plan to use. And to the extent that we have surprises, like more building fees come in. That's a good target to try to earmark some of those funds for an account, but you have to remember that not everything exceeds plan. Some things come in under plan and those,
Right.
if you only take away from the things going over, you're gonna wind up missing your budget.
Yeah.
That having been said, you need access to something. I don't think we're talking
And
about
so
millions of dollars here.
That's where thinking through how much was really based in the idea of we have been saving money on the budget for years. And so that percentage piece is really just a way of thinking about, like, we're not asking you to give
Collect
us
new
money,
tax
because-
revenue.
No, we're asking you to deflect some of the money that we're saving so that we have access to that for future.
So in your memo, we need access to X amount, either through Jamie's budget or a reserve account. To be able to, further our mission, something along those lines. I would probably be helpful, and then
Okay.
finance committee and the council can determine if it's a reserve account or if we just add a line item.
Can you explain
Jamie's-
again? I didn't quite understand the intricacies of what the difference is between a reserve account and Jamie's budget and that's what and how that functions.
So every year we approve a pretty detailed budget.
Right.
And there's an operating side of it, which those funds are available for a year, and then if they're left over, they'll go back into the next year or a kitty. Or there's capital approvals, which those don't really have a time limit, so those we'll approve the funds, and that project might happen over a series of years. But expending those funds doesn't require council action after that initial approval. That's something that staff can direct. If it goes into a reserve account, typically staff does not have access unless you are really specific when you create that account about how they can use. Typically, those funds would be savings. They'll sit there, and when an opportunity comes up, something just gets.
That's something you
brought
can
back to
roll in if you came up with a memo saying we were gonna compete. in
Yes,
this
it can
grant,
happen pretty quickly.
And it can go.
Or it can happen through the budget process as well. So instead of asking the taxpayer for more money, you say, hey, we have these funds sitting here to support this initiative, and that can be used as your funding.
And the
source.
money that's in Jamie's budget goes away at the end of the year. yes.
Unless it's in the capital budget, yes.
Okay, so capital budget can be. Okay.
But in capital typically isn't available forever. There are still kind of the timeframe parameters.
And there's money attached to like the CIP. You know that there's vehicles going to be purchased. And so the capital improvement fund is there with those projects already earmarked that amount of money. Is that right?
In general, yes, especially for equipment, but
Yeah.
there are some items that are a little more generic. And there's some discretion around them, like the planning initiatives fund. So there are ways to keep the door open for some of those things too.
We as a committee have to understand too that some of the savings that we get from the projects go to support. But maybe we don't need that anymore. Really, we never had a sustainability coordinator before, and our energy plan created that position. And we always thought that some of the projects that we did, the savings would help fund that position. So we have to recognize that's why we have Jana. Yeah, yeah. And we were appreciative of the town council approving that FTE or that position, so to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah,
And we all agree Jamie is a good thing, right?
yeah, it's been money well spent, because it's contributed to additional savings.
We need a couple more Jamies.
How can we help? This is helpful to understand some of the process involved and the different options that we have. But I think step one is to find out, kind of get a universe of what we've done since, what is it, 12 years now? Since 12 years, kind of give that way we have a history to put in that memo about this is what we've done. So there's value in what our committee is doing. And then show off that value and then say, we want to continue to be a value added committee within the town. And we feel like we could use this as somewhat of a starting point.
Just out of curiosity, how much, I know Deb has talked about this for years. Well, I've been on this committee for at least 10, so it seems like it's a long time. How much are we talking about here, just roughly? What would tickle the cockles of your heart in terms of having
You know,
set
I'm not
aside?
ready per se.
No, but I mean, that certainly influences the conversation. Are we
Yeah.
talking about 10,000, 25,000? I mean, obviously, as the number gets bigger and bigger, real, is it a lot of money or is it peanuts?
I don't feel like I have numbers, and that's where the issue is. That's why I wanted somebody else to do math.
Well, somebody's gonna have to.
Well,
come
we
up
can-
with- Somebody's gonna have to come up with a number.
Yeah.
I don't know what we could actually claim out of the CHP system. Because I don't know if that was a home run or not.
Could we take a look even just at the lights, and what's the annual savings?
Yeah, we probably have those numbers from,
If you take a look at the solar panels, because I did all of the analysis for that. If you take a look at the solar panels, what did I calculate our savings were? What was it, about $170,000? If you took 10% of that, that would be $17,000.
That's a one-time thing.
That's over the life of, that doesn't seem like a really big number to me. And that then makes it more possible to do something, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think we have to. do
that's
some
why,
overthinking.
that's kind of why I'm swimming around here,
Yeah.
talking about what are we talking about?
So we're probably talking,
It's dialing for dollars, that.
I know.
I wouldn't have a venture to guess, really, it's tough.
And then I'd have to go back and.
But we could come up with the number. Yeah, I mean, it's performance based, right?
Yeah.
I think Autumn has
Well, I was just
idea.
gonna say, I was just talking to Norm, I'm like, I think you need all three things, right? So I think you need a line item in engineering services, like a sustainability initiatives, and that would get you started. Planning has 45,000. And so we were just talking like, if you were trying to match a grant or something, 25 to 45,000 seems reasonable to me, a reasonable ask. And that could be an annual line item unless we get in trouble and then it goes away. And then if you have a bigger thing that you know you want to work on, that goes into your CIP budget. That's your $100,000, your 200,000, your big projects, right? Your vulnerability assessments and your transportation master plan. Those are your big ones. And those are things you know you're going to work on as a group. So I don't know, if you want to build your own solar farm, that's your CIP, right? And it has a set amount. And then in the meantime, maybe create some sort of reserve that's building money over the years, maybe stealing from excess electrical permit money, because that seems like it could really tie direct. And then that builds over the years, and that's that account that if you had some big project come up mid-year, you could go to council, right? And have that one action and get access to those funds. So if you had all three things going on simultaneously, you would be building up your reserves, big projects, and doing the small matching things and advertising for composting and things like that. And I think
And
That might work.
this kind of addresses some of your concerns about access and timing. Because the annual appropriation, you do it once a year, and once it's approved. Then access to the funds is
Is there,
straightforward.
right, right.
So that's an annual process of getting it in about each year. The CIP. Again, is an annual process, but that opens the world to the big projects. And then, once it's approved. The money doesn't go away until the project's done. And then you have the reserve where access is more limited, but it builds over time as a savings. So you've got three levers to pull, like Autumn said, and they give you different opportunities for reacting to whatever comes up that you're interested in doing. So makes sense to us.
Mhm.
It's early, we haven't had all of our coffee yet.
I know, I've had more than I.
Nailed it.
So yeah, and I think there's our work to go forward, is to provide them some number for those three numbers and let's proceed on.
Like for projects that would apply for each.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems like Autumn is very in touch with the dynamics of this process. More so than me. How do you feel? Do you feel like you're in touch with the dynamic? What I would like
I'm in
to
touch
add,
with my inner
Yeah, no,
feelings,
no.
yeah.
would you be willing to work with us a little bit to put some of this together?
Absolutely.
Because you seem to.
You guys know what you wanna accomplish.
You
I
seem
can,
to be a
like,
step
help you get
ahead
there.
in terms of the dynamics of
Yeah.
the process. These various three features, and what goes where.
Definitely.
Well, I think this has been a great way we needed something to do. We have our sustainability day that we're still working through, and this committee is part of that, but we didn't really have anything on our plate right yet. Now, there's all kinds of thoughts like what we could do.
Back projects, but yeah.
But I do know that the Fed or the state level, there's been an appropriations through the governor's budget to continue adding funds to the climate action plan. And they are the community resilient grants and those kind of things that are gonna be constantly coming out over the next 2 years because of that appropriated funds. And so we need, and they're likely, I can't say because I'm not the author of those, but we can go after those because we know about them. And I'm not proposing to be a community service center, but I certainly think there's opportunities and we've participated in them before. But to the committee, that line item in the state budget has been renewed again with the governor's biennial budget. So there's funding there.
I'm ignorant to the timings, so when would money be available, like, how would that?
So our fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. The budget process starts at the end of the year.
Yeah.
With staff.
January.
Gets approved, well, like we just had the budget vote yesterday for the school department. So that's kind of the timing between January and April is when most of the decisions kind of happen. And then you get access to the funds the following July 1st.
But you've always had a nice process in the budget development where you listen to the staff, and then you've also gone to committees and said, listen, what do you think you might want to do?
So the first time that we would get a penny would be basically a year from now.
Yeah.
Right, so
planning
we
for
have
that.
lots of
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
to sit down and figure this out.
But it comes quick.
Yeah.
I know, I understand.
You have to do the budget process and then all of a sudden it's too late.
Too
so.
late.
Yeah,
Until
but-
December, right?
Yeah,
So middle of
So,
December,
yeah,
really, to
I
get it.
mean, but it
to
doesn't
get our
like
ducks
we have
in a
to
row.
have something put together by
Yeah.
next meeting,
And then we have to use
so we can start.
the reserve account. For, in that 12 months.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably not gonna be any money.
Not reserve,
The budget. line
Yeah.
item.
This is.
We'll
very
put together a flow chart.
Yeah.
And remember,
No, it's
I mean,
okay.
your voice is gonna make a difference. So Jamie's gonna propose the budget Tom needs to make decisions based on everything that's going on, and not everything's gonna be able to get through.
Yeah.
But sometimes the council, if it's a priority, can bring some things back, and that's where your voice can really.
Right,
And
and I
that's
think
where
with a
having
good proposal, like a good, clean story, then you know, you give yourself a better chance of being heard and getting that funding that we're hoping for, so.
And having the light in the comprehensive plan.
I would go back, you know, I would make sure that people know that's even then in there. I was your liaison for 2 years and I didn't know, so.
Okay.
Well, now we know a couple of steps that we can do, in the interim, get ready for the, December timeframe and then stock it to you so you can't back out on. That's extremely helpful and I appreciate the time spent at least walking us through this. We've always struggled with some of the timelines of things and we've also learned that there's ways around things. Ordinances are a great way of helping things move along faster than.
Yeah, the other, I guess, question slash is, we don't need to have a treasurer in this committee, right? It's all money and everything is over to somebody else and we don't have to sit there and go, oh, I spent it on this and this
It's
is
all
this much.
town funds in this part of
Perfect.
the work that we do.
Good clarification.
Do you use Munis? So do we. Hate Munis. Oh, I would have.
I don't think they're the only one.
Yeah,
That on
okay.
some
Good,
regular
good.
basis.
Any questions?
Tesla's for everyone.
I'll go with the lightning.
There you go.
You all set, Jen?
I am.
Okay.
I'm glad to have another later plan. What I've been. asking
Yeah, I know,
for
we-
a long time, and we haven't gotten to this stage, so this is great. Thanks for coming.
Yes, appreciate the time.
This is very enjoyable.
We'll have things and I hope you will join us in celebrating Scarborough Sustainability Day.
I look forward to the invite.
Okay. We'll have.
Mark your calendar, October 1st.
We would send one, but.
We don't.
Good job, Lynn.
Thank you, John. I'll see you
John,
later.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you both for making the time.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for making me ask. I just,
Yeah.
it's great.
Not that we're just dismissing you, but.
I am gonna have to dismiss myself, and get up
Have enough
to
meetings, so
Wednesday.
y'all- The exit is always welcome. Thank you.
See you, Norm.
So folks, I'm gonna leave you all to the rest of the meeting, but, thanks for putting this together. I think this was really
Thanks to April
insightful.
for doing the
April,
initial
yeah.
outreach.
We're lucky to have a liaison
Welcome.
that works with us.
Do what I can.
The next step.
And thank you for your expertise. And we know we're gonna talk about this next month.
Yes.
And everybody has a copy of it, so we'll be.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but you just seem to be, since the important people have left, you seem to be really like in touch with the dynamics of it, and I think.
Sure.
At least speaking for myself,
And that's the part
that's
that
you-
we
that's-
needed, because
that's very
we were like,
useful.
we should have access to money when there are things that we can do. But we don't know how to make that
Yeah, I
happen.
think it all exists. We just need to get you there.
the three different categories kind of.
Well, that's how the MUBEC board is funded, is through site plan or plans review from the fire marshal's office. And so they get funds that way. And stay tuned, the 2021 is coming right along.
Good.
I was gonna say, Jen, pick it back.
It's gonna be a presentation that we're gonna do.
There's probably nothing valuable in that.
There's nothing valuable,
We wouldn't be able to do anything with it on.
no value here, no value here. A lot of value there.
I read.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Everybody, take care.
So if everyone's good with that discussion, I think next meeting we'll obviously do the lighting standards. I will start pulling together past projects, but if I need those long timers here to be thinking about what other projects you've done also as we start kind of pulling together our main,
We're only gonna
information to make our
we're only
case.
gonna mention the value added ones.
yes, we are. Yeah, there's
It's
one.
gonna be in the accretive fund rather than the subtractive fund.
Yeah, there might be one or two that we don't want to talk about.
We haven't had an update on that in a while. How is she?
How is who? She,
The.
you're not talking about Trigen,
The
are you?
lovely thing sitting behind you.
That, yeah, we don't talk about that.
We do occasionally. and I'm
It's-
asking
I
you to
do,
take
but
just a
everybody,
minute.
nobody gives me any answers.
It's hard to give answers, so there's a lot of maintenance that needs to go into it, that I don't think was necessarily factored into the calculations when that was being proposed to the town.
And that's one of the problems about quantifying savings.
Right, yeah,
Because it's a very dynamic process that.
right, Especially something like
being
that.
Becoming,
where there was a lot of unknowns, and that, I think, I started doing some research on cogeneration and trigeneration probably 6 months ago as we were working through the budget process and things like that, and I don't know, does anyone here know what the time frame for that, like what the life cycle time frame was for that? Because it might,
Rick might.
He
have the
might.
Best grasp on it.
everything that I had found,
Conceptually, it sounds like the concept of Trigen is.
I think it is a sound concept, I think execution wise,
Something was way off and
yeah, and I think it was overscaled for what it's being used for, and so that doesn't,
A lot
that
of,
affects the efficiency.
yeah, a lot of things changed, right?
Yes.
I mean, originally the thought was it was gonna be provided, and does it provide any power at all to the
It
public
provides
safety?
waste heat to public safety, it doesn't provide electricity.
that was what was gonna be left over was waste heat, not electricity.
But we do have excess electricity also.
Is that not tied to another meter yet?
Everything goes through town hall meter. So
But it's not all being used in town hall.
it is not all being, so it's because it's not all being used in town hall. When it's running efficiently, we have excess electricity. I think that's happened 1 month in the past 24 months.
Okay, so that's not what it was, okay.
I think we
but
should
does it
just not
show
talk about this.
Because, I mean, those sorts of installations are valuable when they're run full bore. And so that was the issue, was ensuring that we would be able to run it full bore.
Yeah, and I think also there's way, like I had said initially, there's way more maintenance involved in that, and things breaking and difficulty getting parts to replace it, and
It's just the wrong equipment.
and not having necessarily local expertise to perform that maintenance. So
So maybe that is something we should look at, is what is the life cycle of that? How close to
yeah, because
that
everything
are
that
we? And what do we recommend as a replacement?
Right.
There were a lot of numbers kicked around at the time. I know there were. Yeah, because, I spent some time looking, how long ago was that?
I think it's 2014,
How long has that been here?
almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And it looks like 15 to 30 years is kind of
Let's see, 30 years.
Really?
the lifespan. In some of the literature that I've read, it
Well, this
says
is clearly not 30 years.
in some of the literature I've read, it says, starting 10 to 15 years, you essentially need to do a massive replacement. It's an internal combustion engine that's running all the time.
Same thing.
Like
It's
none
just
of
like
us
a
run
car.
our cars for 24 hours a day for 10 years and expect that it's going to continue running for another 10 years. So
And so there was another class of like Sterling engine or something like this that was much less maintenance prone and just we were relying on what we thought was expertise of someone who turns out not to have had the expertise that they claimed to have had. And so it might be time to really start digging into what the replacement equipment looks like.
well, I'm thinking about, do we want to continue with this type of system, or is there something better now that we're
Thank you,
10 years
and
in?
I think Rick, we brought this up before. Rick's not here, unfortunately. He said that the technology has moved on, and that was one of the problems, because We were
Right, that's
we
the-
were the earliest.
The
adopters.
aerial technology as opposed to the Trigen consumption.
Yeah, so,
Piece.
since we're talking money, do you have any idea how much you're spending on maintenance and everything on this equipment?
I don't personally, but I know that this is managed by our community services department, and I think that they have, they can give us a rough estimate.
Okay, so that's a different issue than the issue we started with. So we need a number for our ask for, but this might be something that goes into that ask is prepping for the replacement of this equipment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
I
we
think
can
we need
just
to
kind of
be-
tiptoe away from this.
I do think that we need to be taught.
It's a very obvious term.
We'll just go boldly.
No,
Just
we'll,
go boldly.
we just won't talk, we won't talk much about it until people come to kind of start falling away.
I mean, I would love to see the town invest in a municipal solar array and power as many of our buildings.
Yeah,
So.
so that's where I wanted to go next, is what I think happened
Thanks
next.
out of
So
CIP.
if there isn't heat coming from that massive engine going somewhere, is that an issue or is that? Or is that just, we just happen to have it, therefore we're using it, but if it wasn't there, nobody cared.
We still have a boiler in this building also.
And you have to run that boiler when this doesn't work, right?
Mhm.
It would be interesting to understand right now whether this machine is cash flow positive. I mean, are we, is the,
I don't think
does
we,
this off, I mean, are we spending more keeping this machine running than it's worth?
my gut tells me yes, we are.
Let's move
So
on.
that's our.
And then maybe
that's
we need
surprise.
to tiptoe away from it. We just have to. I hate in these
I
meetings.
know.
We just have to figure somebody to blame for this.
No, we just go boldly with
Well,
a
who's,
replacement. We
And
say,
it-
look, we can save
technology
you
has
money.
changed So much.
who's not on
we
the
are-
committee
we don't-
anymore that we
we-
can
we-
blame for this?
The reason we can save money is because we're wasting money because of our previous idea, but we can save you money. and
Well, we won't do it again.
Yeah,
This decision was,
at some point.
this decision was made on the best information at the time.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
this
we're
was
all
made on the
doing all
best
this.
decision we could do.
The best information available at the time.
And the concept of cogeneration is in fact sound.
And that natural gas was the way to go.
And
You know,
since
Rather than
then,
oil.
if this is 10 years old, look at all the things that have changed.
A lot has changed in 10 years.
Solar panels and LED lights, we're all sitting here under CFL walls.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
There's a project to change all the lighting in the town hall
Yeah.
from CFLs to LEDs. Yeah, that costs a
I
lot of
mean,
money.
and this is something that I would love to see on a line item, is just an energy audit for town hall. So that we can understand what are our inputs, what are our,
We did audits of all the municipal buildings in probably 2010. So it's time to do that again.
yeah, and this one's super complex, since when we add in Trigen. Because we've got our Trigen, we've got our boiler, we've got our, CMP electricity. So we have 3 different inputs for energy coming into this building. It's a really complex system that, I think that we're gonna need a consultant to come in and run the numbers and everything for us, because I've started pulling together all of our utility bills and everything for that, and it is a massive, massive undertaking.
Is
for
it realistic to
building.
do that before December? Or is that-
Well, to do an energy audit before December, it's not, because we don't have dedicated funding for it. So here's why we need that sustainability.
So that
line item.
audit of all municipal properties is probably something to put into the budget item rather than.
It is, and let me say too that, so community services had put in a CIP to do kind of not strictly an energy audit, but an audit of all of our municipal buildings in terms of energy was in there, but just like conditions of various aspects, the roofs, the other mechanical systems and things like that, just so that they have an understanding of the current status of municipal buildings and start thinking about what upgrades or replacements or needs are in all of our
So we should be
buildings.
working with that.
We should be working with community services on this,
And
yes.
they're responsible for the maintenance of this system, community services?
It all comes out of their budget. And there's one person on staff who has a little bit of an understanding and can kind of troubleshoot certain things, or at least know like when it's above his ability, and then he needs to call in a contractor to deal with the maintenance and things like that.
I think it would be extremely useful to understand whether this is costing us money, because it would make sense to kind of say goodbye to it if it's, you know,
Well, costing us money
if it's
relative to
costing
what?
us money.
If it's costing us money relative to having a straight boiler and buying electricity from CMP, or is it costing us money relative to an alternate system, or?
I don't think we really want to go back and buy electricity from CMP if we can come up with some better ways of doing things, and maybe we shouldn't be as committed to oil-fired boilers as we are.
I wonder
And
that-
maybe start thinking about taking the high ground rather than going backwards.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so, I mean, what we need to do is find out how much it's costing now and what can we come up with the cost in the future, and that's your savings. You don't have to say.
This is the current
Yeah,
starting point right
it's-
now.
It doesn't matter. To go back, we're using this, right? Whenever it's running,
When
it's
it's running.
being used. So that's the cost. So what can we save from that?
All right, so we know what we need to do next.
But I think first and foremost, we need to complicate our analysis to the point of incomprehensibility.
Hopefully go forward.
And I think we just continually say, we were working with the best available information at the time.
It sounds like you're prepping for
That
an
this
IRS audit.
equipment is potentially moving past its usable life, that, you know, we need to be looking towards
It honestly,
updating the technology.
Yeah,
versus
from-
moving at a cost. I
And
mean,
remember that this
that
was paid
resonates
for
with
by
all of us.
efficiency, and so whoever we get rid of.
well, part of it, a big, there's 250,000 of it. And it's all downhill from here.
Yeah,
Because
nobody
this
wants
stuff
to
gets
hear that
older
we're
and
pouring
it
money
falls
into an
apart.
old car, right?
It just falls apart.
Yeah.
We're gonna spend a ton of money trying to keep it running.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's like keeping your
Exactly.
56
So,
Studebaker on.
that's
the road.
Okay,
something
so
for
we
us.
have
Big-
several projects. We have the project of writing this memo for the budget process. There's a project of figuring out what they have to do next about heat and electricity, not just for town hall, but for other structures. Has the community services audit already happened?
So that actually was not funded in this current budget cycle. They had it in there as a CIP and it was not funded
For an audit.
for an audit of all of the municipal buildings, yeah. So,
So do we need to break that up and put it on a cycle that the buildings are audited each building is audited every 10 years? And
I
pick the
think
one
that
we're shape now and.
this is a conversation that we can have with community services, since it was their initiative, and it is, like I said, it is beyond just energy usage, it's everything, so. But it would be good to have this committee supporting that effort
Absolutely.
Um,
We didn't know about it.
and voicing support for that effort through the budget process.
It stung because the community services budget had a number of other, you know, fairly significant studies that they just done, the Parks and Facilities Master Plan, you know, and then so they have projects that are associated with the results of that plan, and like there was a number of other initiatives that community services probably prioritized over the energy audit.
So we just got swept up.
Well, we didn't even get involved. We just didn't notice.
We
Okay.
didn't, yeah.
So there's an issue of when and how to get some audit stuff done. There's the issue of, community solar that's either for only municipal buildings or is open to residents or whatever that might be. And getting some of that community solar in locations where there are already people is really a valuable activity. And have it all done. So there's that to move forward on. What other things do we have to move forward on? Because we need to move forward again. It's been a while since we've moved forward. And that's frustrating.
Well, and I think that a lot of this may inform perhaps a capital improvement project in our fiscal year 24 budget. So getting all of this information together, having a prioritized list of what projects we want to do. And yeah, it's going to be a year from now, but we need to do our homework to get that in a.
Do we need to be following up on the school bus, electric school bus conversation?
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing effort. Also, I've shared some information with the school department. I haven't done anything kind of concerted with them just because I haven't had the time.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, there are opportunities out there. I feel like there are towns in our area who are now have electric school buses on the road, and I think it would be really helpful for our school department to hear from their experiences because they had a bad experience in the past adopting, newer technology,
Well,
and so there's a lot of
Front
hesitancy.
has some risks.
Yeah.
Getting out in front has some risks. Somebody has to get out in front or they don't go anywhere.
Right,
But we don't always have to be out in front.
right. Yeah, so I know Yarmouth has a few electric buses on the road. I've been meaning to check in with GP Cog to see if they're going to plan to do any kind of technology transfer or like peer-to-peer outreach, try to organize something with the communities in this region. There was just an online webinar that I was a little disappointed in, talking about other experiences from towns in New
Who
England.
else is going to pull in on that initiative? Because there's a sort of health and safety piece there as well. About those buses that are stopping and starting and stopping and starting. All kinds of things.
Yeah, I don't know if like state CDC might have any interest in participating, Department of Education, things like that. But I really think that the peer-to-peer information sharing is going to be the most valuable thing. Because I don't know that they necessarily want to hear from a salesman, but if they're hearing from, other transportation department, municipal transportation departments, school transportation
So,
departments.
Do we have this list? This list should be like at the end of our minutes or something.
I'll include it. I haven't been taking notes,
But I mean, that
we're
should be,
recording.
just should be standard there at the bottom, but we're always seeing this list.
Yep. Can add that.
All right, thanks.
Other thoughts before we move on to our updates?
I just think going forward, though, money is gonna be a really tough issue in this town.
Yeah, always a really tough issue.
No, but I think it's gonna be a really tough issue with the new school and all of that. There's gonna be a lot of turbulence.
And that's why I continue to focus on the fact that the things that we are recommending are money savers.
Savers.
Yeah,
Um,
that can't apply to all departments where you're making improvements to city.
so. And the other place to do on that energy saving is, I mean, this is the energy audit question. It's what the
Well,
legislature says. Okay, what is-
We've always saved money for the town.
Yeah, we think so. Let's couch that a little bit. That's always the goal.
It's part of the tiptoeing. No, we've done.
You don't always have to save money. That shouldn't be your goal. You're trying to get to the town to a more sustainable place, right? So saving money is cool, but it's not
Well,
you don't have to.
we try
frame
to
every
be, we try to
conversation
be
like that.
efficient and effective.
Yeah, I mean,
We try to do things right and do the right things.
I think you're in a good spot moving forward. I think you have a good plan and you have great staff and I think you're in a good spot to get kind of organized. I will say, you only have one staff person and she does other things too, so you can't come up with a CIP that's 6 items long, right? Like, I'm just gonna put that out there. Like, the list can run, but it has to be.
Yeah, we need to be
over
narrow.
time. Yeah, it
We need
can't.
to prioritize.
Yeah,
and do whatever.
So I just want to warn you that, because
I still
that
think,
comes up with a.
I think getting rid of this thing would be a big step forward
Mm-hmm.
if we can find something good to replace it with.
Well, it requires an energy audit and requires somebody who thinks about building management.
I'm just gonna say this, I'm not sure bringing that up with the initial request to get started with the budget is the wisest
Yeah.
negotiation move, right? So you might get in there and ask to get started and then bring that up after you do like your energy audit, if you get that approved or something, and then that comes up. after.
Well, we need the energy audit to get some data.
Right, right. You want to be real positive when you're.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I get it. I know it's called a political building process.
Yeah, yeah.
Makes sense.
All right, so we can move on to updates. First up is Sustainable Scarborough Day. All of the committee members have been tasked with reaching out to their assigned participants and vendors by July 1 to get them kind of committed and on board. So things are slowly trickling in. I've been working on reaching out to our kind of commercial vendors, so solar providers, energy audits, heat pumps, things of that nature. And so we're getting people lined up for that. And then we have a number of nonprofit organizations and other groups who are starting to respond that they'll be there and participate either with a table or with a workshop or perhaps both. So I say this every month, but we will start doing our kind of public promotion later on this summer. So thinking probably early August, that will be 2 months out from the event. Don't necessarily want to do it too early so that people are either annoyed with us by the time the event rolls around or they forget about it and things like that. So
Party happened.
yeah, exactly. That's kind of the quick update for Sustainable Scarborough Day. April, do you have a town council?
Were we ever able to get a hold of Pete
Pete
Carson?
Carson, no, he's ghosting me. If anyone knows Keith Carson.
I asked him weather questions on DM on Instagram or he's replied.
And he's
then-
responded.
Well, then maybe you're our Carson.
And I've seen about the playground.
Excellent.
Yeah, so if you can accost him out in public.
There we go.
That would be
Put
really.
him on the spot.
So we really wanted him to kind of just come and talk as an EV owner and share his experience, which he's already kind of done a little bit like on his Instagram and things like that. But also just being a public figure, he would be maybe a draw.
Big
for
draw.
people.
Okay.
So if you do
Select.
see him out and about
Yeah.
and are
Okay.
comfortable
Or,
shouting him up.
or you could communicate with him directly,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah.
Do not need to tackle it. Just-
Yeah, well, I wouldn't touch him, but. Yeah. Sure,
Great.
okay, I mean, no promises.
No,
Yeah.
none at all.
But just remember, there's no pressure on you.
Sure.
Just don't come back.
Had a hair.
Glad you lost the beard.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anson. Anthony.
Town council?
Yeah.
So, big news that went by very quietly. We passed the GMO on Wednesday night, last Wednesday. So the revised GMO is now in place. It completely removed the exemption process in terms of having to try and provide public benefit and coming before the council for big projects. And so that to me is a huge win because the council got really bogged down with that in the last year. It does limit the number of permits. It designates certain areas of town where we want to kind of, restrict our growth to those areas. And, just like everything, there were 7 of us, so there's some compromising on the exact number of permits, but it is a pretty significant reduction in permits over what we had been doing. So hopefully we can set this now and let it run, and the council won't be dealing with trying to navigate the GMO every month. And we'll see how this goes. The school budget passed last night, by a very, very small margin, 800 and something, to 700 and something. So less than 10% voter turnout, which is a bummer. But I sat at the table for the building steering committee for 2.5 hours yesterday, and I think I talked to probably 25 people, so it was slow.
Do we have any sense of the later
Oh,
date
absolutely. People had
may
no idea
impact-
that we were
yeah.
supposed to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, they thought that they thought either it had already happened and they missed it, or that we weren't doing it for some reason this year. I had
So
people say that's
There was a
great.
lot of publicity about the earlier election
Yes.
day.
Yes.
Statewide.
Yep, yeah, every community around us was already done. And people are on school vacation now.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was that date and I had to come in quickly and found that they'd only just gotten the ballots the day
Right.
before. So, yeah.
Yeah. But everything was low, even our early voting numbers. So even people who were expecting to vote, who kind of think that third week of June and they start looking for it, even those people didn't really turn out the way that they usually do, so. I worry, obviously, because I'm pretty invested in the school building project, and so I don't know what this means for the school building project in terms of community engagement, but
Maybe a hard-
time will tell.
Yeah. At 10%, it's kind of hard to project out. isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the big problem will be when it comes up for a vote on the bond, to pay for it.
Yeah.
And if that gets shot down, which is, it's gonna be the key vote, that gets shot down. And then there's big problems.
Yeah.
Big problems.
So is there a role for us to get involved in talking about, just the energy sustainability piece of those existing buildings?
So.
Did get involved a little bit with the wet work replacement.
Yeah.
Because that building was simply pouring heat out into the environment.
Yeah.
And could talk about the cost savings and that.
So Rick is on the building subcommittee for sustainability and planning for the new building. And he would obviously be able to speak to better whether or not they really addressed the issues of the current buildings. They've been identified in kind of vague terms, saying things like they only have, E9, I'm gonna get this all wrong, but you know what I mean? Like the insulation is, significantly below building standards, and, the windows are significantly below with building standards, and this is how much it costs to heat them right now, and so we do have an idea of the inefficiencies of those buildings. I don't know in terms of an educational piece, if the building steering committee feels like it's something that they want to shine a brighter light on. I don't know what their necessarily biggest talking points are going to be in terms of convincing people to vote. But obviously the energy inefficiency of those three buildings and the cost to run those three buildings, it has been identified. I just don't know if we plan on really pumping
So
that
they're
out
on
there.
top of.
Yeah.
Understanding.
Yeah.
They can decide.
Yeah.
Politics.
I think so. That's it from me.
I was just gonna say, if they do want to shine some light on energy costs, because that is an annual cost for all of these schools. If they want to share that information with this group, and we can maybe work
Yeah,
on
I
some
can
of the
bring that to you
messaging
guys.
around that. I don't know that we would necessarily want to spend the time on it if that's not going to be one of their talking
Sure.
points, but if they
But I
wanted
can,
to.
I
be-
can easily gather there's a couple of one-sheeters floating around, like I can easily share that information with this group.
I think that's a good
No
idea,
problem.
because the comparison between the heating costs currently and the cost, the huge cost of a new building may not sway voters very much.
Right.
Yeah, but maybe, and I don't know how to do this, so I'm just kind of just plucking off the top of my head. Shouldn't that be sustainability of that building as opposed to energy efficiency
Yeah.
of that building?
Yeah.
And it would be nice to be able to go to the voters and say, the last building lasts N number of years.
Mhm.
This building is gonna last N number of years more than that because da, 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 da. So,
I can easily get that information to you guys.
Autumn, do you have anything for the planning board that you want to share?
Yeah, so Monday was a big night at planning board for the Downs development. The town center is gonna get kicked off. Their Market Street is the road that they're cutting on Higas right now.
Mm.
So that connection is gonna go up to Scarborough Downs where the racetrack was. I don't know if you've all seen it, but the racetrack is now down.
yeah,
So that's kind of,
When does
different
the
this
sign
week.
come?
I don't think the sign is going to. come
Yeah,
down.
I think
I think the
historically.
sign is gonna
Yeah.
sort of stay, maybe be repainted and touched up.
This is the ugliest.
But so the Market Street and Scarborough Downs intersection, they got a site plan approved for a mixed use building, so there's retail and restaurant on the bottom floor and then 42 units above. And then there's also a commercial building with a restaurant and some office space on Market Street. And so those are approved. There's the roundabout got approved for Scarborough Downs, Paddock Way and Pay where innovation comes in. So you're gonna see that before Costco gets opened. Some other apartments further down, closer to where the existing buildings are now approved. So 5 different items there. 3i Homes is going through that process. That's in the Market Town Center as well. And then yeah, Monday was like a Downs night. And then a Wendy's is gonna be a Chase Bank, so they're gonna do a renovation of
Another
that.
bank?
building. Another bank. We're very bank centric here.
Another bank in that loop.
So many banks. I've been here for 10 months and I think I've had like 4 or 5 banks come through. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, but the Wendy's over there, by Hannaford's is gonna become Chase Bank. And they're gonna do some renovations to the exterior and remove some parking, add some landscaping. So I think it'll be an improvement.
Wow.
Oh, and also for the lighting, I have never, ever spent so much time going back and forth on ordinance creation. I have read so much, I do not know anything about lighting, but I feel like now I know this much. And so when you review this ordinance for next time, if there's anything that you see that's crazy, or I took information from the dark sky org, I took information from the city of Flagstaff, that was actually the first dark sky ordinance, and consequently, I worked there a long time ago. And then I took information from IES, I have the books on hand now, I bought all the pamphlets, Rick told me which ones to get. So we have all the information if we want to change anything, so some of that it's significantly different, if not the same from the last version, so that's why you have 2 versions. The color version is hard to follow, and then the black and white is just like, this is what we have now. So just keep that in mind.
Do we have a timeline on this in terms of when you think this will come to
Ordinance,
ordinance?
as soon as you guys are done with it, I think I'd like to take it forward.
Right.
And then the long range planning committee is working on landscaping materials. And then I think after, if you all are up for it, there's some other areas to work on, but we talked about maybe signage being something this group could work on. I don't know if you have much interest. It might be a really quick one and done sort of meeting. And then for the lighting of signage and that sort of thing. But
No down signs.
that's all I have.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because there was a lot of people when the Downs first went in that said, do not take
Do not
down
take
Scarborough
down,
Downs
yeah.
sign down. So.
There still will be
Nostalgia.
So,
Yeah.
so this is just gonna age out, pretty soon
Ugly.
people are gonna go, what is that? Can we get rid of that? Because they have no idea what it is.
So where's the tipping point?
Yeah, I know.
How long we have to look
Yeah,
at it and
exactly,
people start to
yeah.
I
forget.
will say, from where I came from in Texas, it was kind of funny. We had a new monument for the community put in that was. It was like the updated version of something like that because it was kitschy and it kind of matched our town. And so it all cycles around, right? It might be the coolest thing ever in 5 years. Admire. Things come around.
Okey doke.
Visually, architecturally, they always kind of come back. It's interesting to see.
Sorry, this sign doesn't bother me. Does the sign bother you, Deb?
I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it.
She's my litmus test. If it doesn't bother Deb, it's
And that
okay.
area is called
There's a
Scarborough
song
Downs. Why don't you take down the part that says racing on Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Since no.
So people don't think that they can just drive on that road as fast as they want. Yeah, I don't know what the status of that is.
Nothing.
All right, so Conservation Commission, the town council at the first meeting in June passed a resolution to support 30 by 30, which is conserving 30% of the town's land by 2030. And as was alluded to, today, the council also approved an open space plan and their fiscal year 24 CIP, capital improvement plan budget, so. They'll be starting work on that and, trying to understand how we might achieve. Conserving 30% of the town's area by 2030, to give some perspective, that's about 4,000 acres of land. Additional. That's significant.
These preserves of a couple hundred acres is huge.
So, the open space plan, I think, will identify opportunities and strategies, for how we might achieve that. So that will get underway.
Does that include working farmland?
It would
As open
include,
space?
yeah, working farmland is included, yeah. So, we'll get going on that very soon. We need to get, an RFP out to hire our consultant to work on the open space plan for us. Also in the CIP, which didn't receive as much attention, is a vulnerability assessment. So looking at how climate change and sea level rise may affect our critical areas and infrastructure, so that we can start pulling together a plan for how we're going to shore up various aspects of our infrastructure over the next multiple years.
Route 1 over the marsh.
Route 1 over the marsh is in progress. We are working with DOT on that. More information about public meetings and things like that will be coming out very soon. Okay.
Is Pete Slabinski still on the commission?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that's his baby. Been talking about that for 12, 14 years.
Yes.
Nothing ever moves forward on it.
No. So hopefully it will now.
Dead in the water. Sorry, bad metaphor.
Well, I think in the
Really,
past,
Really,
the town has said, oh, well, we're working on all these regional efforts. Well, the regional efforts, in my mind, just point to the need that we need a very focused local effort so that we understand. It kind of points out like vulnerable areas, but doesn't give us recommendations on how to address those vulnerable areas. And so we need more information, so that the town knows how to move forward.
you remember the other day with the, this is off topic slightly, the other day with the natural gas thing down here by the tank, you should have seen traffic on Payne Road. All of those people trying to unload from Route 1 and figure out other ways of getting
Just seen the
towards
the
Saco.
traffic in Hannaford's parking lot. You
Well,
could
it
not
was just
believe
to pull
Hannaford's
that
parking
out.
lot.
And so all of us were trying to come, it was an exam day, so we we're
Yeah.
trying to come get kids from exams. I ended up telling the children to walk to Walgreens.
You know, but I feel sorry for Pete. He's been talking about this for years. He's given so many workshops and so many presentations and everything. And it's just every year, it's just.
Well,
Now we're on another path, of course.
well, and now that we are plowing water off of Route 1 on a semi-regular basis, I think that it's a little bit easier to pay attention.
All the
What,
people,
is there any update on the lights? The-
So the adaptive traffic signals are installed. They are working on being calibrated. There have been a couple issues that are being worked through primarily. They are in use. Yeah, they're working on being calibrated, which is why wait times. So it's artificial intelligence. So it
Right.
needs to kind of go through some time to basically learn the most common traffic patterns and things like that.
And just when it was learning, school let out.
It's school let out also like randomly, well,
And there was a gas.
And school starts up again, or is it gonna have to learn every year?
it will learn every year, but it'll be a much quicker process because it's smart. I don't know. It's automated. I mean, it'll figure it out way faster than we would input that information for it.
I think the light at Dunstan is a good example.
Yeah.
Like, so when we used to do late start Wednesdays, you would be backed up over the overpass trying to make a left onto Route 1. But the light that has been at that intersection has been there longer, and that it figured it out, like it did, like it made it so that Wednesday morning, that light stayed green for a lot longer and would clear us out, and it only happened on Wednesday. So I think that's a good example of the technology doing exactly what we're hoping it.
Yeah, it takes about a month for it to kind of like calibrate itself and kind of learn the traffic patterns. And once it does, it can adjust, like I said, much more quickly than if we were to go in and mess with the algorithm. So yeah, it's, the hope, I think, was to get it online before the start of the summer beach season. And there were some issues with randomly lights going to flash and things like that, and that's not a good situation. I think that those have been worked through. Autumn, have you heard anything
I
else?
haven't heard anything about the random flashing before.
Yeah. So that was a couple weeks ago.
I know my commute for a few days got really strange and. I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going down Sawyer. Something's happening with the signal.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's from Oak Hill to the Main Med campus. And then later this year, they're going to be filling in from Oak Hill to Dunstan. So this entire corridor from the Main Med campus to Dunstan will be adaptive traffic signals.
Are they communicating with each other as well?
They can only communicate, I think that they are, which is why they needed to install fiber optics. Or extend fiber optics, because that's how it happens. I don't know that they're necessarily communicating with each other right now because of the gap, but once the gap is filled in, I think that they will all communicate. So yeah, that's basically what I have for Conservation Commission.
About recycling.
So good question about recycling. We don't get our regular reports from Eco Maine anymore, because markets have loosened up. And so there's
Recyclables have some value.
recyclables have some value. They're more tolerant of contamination levels.
Yeah,
So
Why are they more tolerant?
I don't know, because it's just easier for them at this point, and it's gonna
make money anyway.
And yeah, and so I think, you know, once markets close again, we're gonna have to go through the outreach all over again to get people sorting
Do
correctly.
we ever get a plan for ensuring that houses that sell get the recycled information?
So it's really a matter of requesting. So we don't have, we don't have a good system in place.
Because we know when properties change hands, tax stuff, right?
Yeah, we don't have a good system for it to trigger how that I don't have that information. Assessing has that information, so we don't have a good system in place to trigger.
Put on our list.
Well, the software that we're getting in planning that is going to theoretically solve all of our problems.
Sure.
Is that?
Just added it down. It's gonna be amazing.
So to sum it up, we have no idea whether people are recycling at the same rate that they were, we don't know.
We don't have that information. Eco Maine does give us some information annually in terms of rates and things like that, but we're not getting the kind of contamination data on a monthly basis that we were getting a couple years ago. Things kind of transitioned during COVID. So yeah, they're able to get rid of their stuff more easily now, so they're not asking municipalities to
Well,
Yeah.
that topic's up there, composting, because
Yeah,
there's a question about your, establishing additional compost drop sites that we were gonna wait for the next budget cycle and forgot to talk about it. So we should put that back on the list and talk about it.
Yeah, that one's a tough one because that one does require a lot of regulation, or policing, I should say.
Yeah.
And we don't have the structure in place, to make sure that people are only putting there what they can put there. We were asked to leave a number of sites because people were just dumping stuff that they shouldn't have been dumping.
The silver bullets.
That was the silver bullets. It was also our composting. So we had 4 composting locations, and it was a combination of improper use and cost that forced us to go down to 1 drop off location at Public Works, because we can monitor it a little bit better there.
But I would like to have that at least on the list of things that we can think about.
How does Scarborough handle trash and recycling?
I don't actually
It's
know.
lovely. You can throw out you can get a tub and you can get, everybody has like sort of a regular 64-gallon tub or whatever. You can get an even larger one at no additional cost. You could get 2 or 3 of those at no additional cost if you wanted to.
I thought it was only 2,
Oh, I
that's
didn't know
okay.
that.
No, and you need to explain why you want that more.
You
Public
just
Works
can't say
doesn't,
you're a trashy person.
yeah, Public Works doesn't just give it out. You get your standard trash and recycling. If they ask for more, the first offer is an additional recycling bin.
Do you live in Scarborough?
I do not. I live in Kennebunk, and so we do the
That's
the
bad.
bags.
That's bad news. You're supposed to live in Scarborough.
I never live where I work.
Is that for personal safety?
Just personal preference, yeah.
And mental health.
Mental
Yeah.
health, yeah.
And so we don't have the bags,
we
and
have
this
the
committee assessed the bag concept at one point, which.
Was a terrible idea and we pushed on.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Well, the bags often lead to more contamination because people don't want to spend money on the bags.
And the
So
bag,
they will just throw everything they can into recycling, whether it's recyclable or not.
We're just really good where I live.
and the bags get coupled with the totes has been unsuccessful in a lot of places.
That's what I
Because
was
people will put like their garbage and then put one bag on top of it, and until it dumps, they can't tell. And there's a lot of just hassles in trying to.
But there was no, according to Bill Donovan, there was no, he was the former council head president, said there was no appetite for pay as you throw.
Well,
I just
and
know
wanted
that-
to-
And there wasn't.
For me, coming from Texas, and I lived in a rural community, so I didn't have
Where did you
recycling
live in Texas?
near Austin. But I lived outside and we didn't have recycling, so I had to drive into a location and, for me, once we moved here, I'm like, oh, this is so easy, and I'm like, oh, this is great, you know,
Yeah.
I just use it, it's just a much better situation. And then it encourages you to recycle everything you can, because you have to buy the bags and
Yeah.
you have to bag the trash, I just was curious.
But I was really recommending at the time that we work out a differential cost for these
Mhm.
different sized totes.
Mhm.
That a person could downsize and then pay less, but because we're just paying our taxes and it's just included at
Yeah,
whatever. level you
gotcha.
thought.
There's no,
Whatever
there's
level you
no,
thought Public Works into, you get.
I understand, that's what I was curious too, 'cause
Yeah.
I've lived in other communities where you had to pay for trash
Right.
service.
Right.
Now it's.
And so my
included.
dad's community, for example,
Okay,
you can pay a reduced rate for every other week collection, or you can pay, like, there's a bunch of different options that people can do. But Tom Hall's sense was that we didn't have a way of doing the billing and that we couldn't incorporate that into the tax bill in any sort of way. And I'm not sure if that ever got looked into any further.
Okay, just curious.
So for
We,
now,
now that we gave up,
it's down from when I moved here, you could have no more than 12.
Garbage bags,
No,
toters,
like
totes.
we
The
didn't have the
wheel
auto,
carts?
no, we didn't have wheel carts at the time. But you
Oh.
would put out no more than 12 garbage cans each week, and I went through the math and tried to figure out how long it
Wow.
would take me to throw out everything I own. No more than 12, it was hilarious.
but the bins and recycling bins that we use here, according to Mike Shaw, have been a very, it's been a very, unforecasted success. The life of those bins.
I'm still.
And
on the same one.
everything.
We beat our bins, we live on a dirt road and we tow behind the car. We beat our bins so hard and it 8 years. Now, watch, I'll go home and we'll lose a deal or something, but yeah, no,
That's when you
ours
just walk
are
across the street,
super.
take your neighbor's bin.
We all live on the dirt road. It's a half mile long. It's, everyone beats up their bin on Huntley
You
Drive.
attach them to your car?
Yeah.
Stick 'em on the-
Yeah,
So
all
vain.
on there.
What-
Yeah, just- It's so loud, yeah. Yeah. My kids love it. They love every part of it. Yeah.
What part of town do you live in?
I live off Broad Turn on a private road called Huntley Drive.
Remind me not to go over there. We're pretty close.
Yeah.
We live off Holmes Road, but we just put our bin out at the end of the driveway.
For a while, we had a we contracted him to come further down the road. And he was a very skilled driver and he could back the truck all the way down and he would come all the way down to the house. And then the condition of the road started to deteriorate and then we lost our good driver. And then they told us, you can try and pay us to come all the way down, but we're not going to. So now we have to break the
And
kinks.
it's a half a mile.
We are, yeah. But they're durable cans, to your
They are,
point.
yeah, that's.
I'm
They are.
very pleased with.
With the quality.
The
of
quality of
trash,
my
it's
trash
like
can.
toters.
Yes.
Good job, Public Works, excellent choice. All right. We've got nothing else. So our next meeting will be July 26th. And we'll talk more about how to pull together our memo and our request, start working on that. For our various budget items. And we'll hope to have that wrapped up by December, because that's when budget season jumps into full force. And we'll also talk like.